Hi, this is Pinky Ghelani and you are watching Pinky TV. Welcome to What Women Want Online. This is a show where you get to meet incredible people who share stories of hope, resilience, and excellence. We are filming at the Social House in Nairobi, Kenya, and these conversations are brought to you by SBM Bank and are powered by Safaricom. The reason I love my job so much is I get to meet people who are doing the work that they were born to do. Nafisa Rayani started off her jewelry line as a hobby, often selling pieces that she was wearing. Despite a lot of naysayers, Nafisa bit the bullet and quit her 9-to-5 and decided that being a creative is something that she wanted to do. Failure has never deterred her. This virtuoso is very open about her story, having 2 stories being published in Chicken Soup for the Soul books. Nafisa, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Pinky. It's an honor and a privilege.
You are an awesome, awesome person, personality, creative. One thing that I noticed though, because we are friends on social media,
yes.
We're personal friends. I love hanging out with you. I think you're completely authentic and an inspiration. You're very vulnerable as an online personal brand. What has allowed you to be this person? Let's start there.
Wow. Well, I think, the thing is for me to be completely authentic in what I do. And it's been very difficult for me to separate the brand, my company brand, from the person that I am. And, the thing I love about this is that I don't have to. What you see is what you get. Every piece that you look at that I created has some of me in it, and some of my experiences, and some of my opinions about things, or whatever it is, my views towards life. And for me, it has been extremely important to be authentic in that. So I love the fact that I can do that. And it's just an avenue that's enabled me to share that with more than just my immediate circle.
So, you've opened up about your father, the death of your father online.
Right.
And of course, you've written about him in the book, Chicken Soup for the Soul. And this is something that really, really struck me because you were talking about trying to remember the last time that you hugged him. And, you sort of say, I couldn't remember the last time I hugged my father. Truth be told, I didn't enjoy being close to him. He always smelled like medicine and something that reminded me of a nursing home for the elderly. It made me uncomfortable. And then you go on to describe more, and then you talk about how suddenly I felt the urge of emotion run through my body as I stood up and I walked slowly over to my father. He continued to look straight ahead at the TV screen, seemingly oblivious to my movement. I knelt down beside his couch with my arms resting on the cushioned right arm of the sofa and softly rested my head on his shoulder. My hair nestled in his neck. That was probably seconds. It felt like an eternity, but I lifted my arm and placed it over his shoulder and held him as tightly as I could. If I had any doubt in my mind about whether I loved my father, they were obliterated in that moment, when I felt his body trembling under my head as he began to sob uncontrollably. First of all, you write beautifully. Tell us about your... Do I need to bring tissue? I'm so sorry.
I very rarely get to hear someone read that back to me, and it just kind of transported me back in time.
It's a very powerful piece. We take it for granted. Maybe some. So I grew up without my father. I've never known what it is to hug my father. I don't remember that.
Right.
Some of us always hug our dads, but that was such a powerful way to express your relationship with your father. Talk to us about, a little bit more about that moment and who he was in your life.
Right. So, when I was growing up, I don't know if it's a generation thing, but, my father was the provider. He was the alpha male. He was the disciplinarian. He was a man to be feared, really. And we weren't very close. We weren't affectionate. I never said I love you. I don't recall him saying that to me. It was just not done. And I knew that he was playing his role to provide for the family, but I was scared of him. So we didn't have conversations. He didn't necessarily know everything that was going on in my life as I was growing up. And I think that, you know, after he had his first stroke and then second stroke, there was something that shifted for me. I came back from university to take care of him and to help my mom take care of him. And I guess the essence of that story was that if there was any doubt about what I felt for my father, it was really clear that it didn't exist. No sense of bitterness or resentment or hatred or any of that ever featured. And it was just unconditional love. But I think for me, the most moving thing is when I put my arms around him and he started to sob. I never in a million years thought that he needed that almost more than I might have needed it. And it was such a powerful moment because I don't know. I mean, the previous generations weren't, you know, men were not allowed to be vulnerable. They weren't allowed to show emotion. They were supposed to be stoic. The first time I saw my father cry was when he lost his mother. And I remember looking at him in utter shock saying, why is he crying?
Yeah.
But he had just lost the mother that had raised him. Of course he was feeling emotion. And so I think that was a really powerful thing. And my love for my father never dissipated, but it grew exponentially, especially to watch a man who, you know, had it all, was always the life of the party, it was always, you know, the one that people flocked to and listened to and loved to be around, completely emasculated against his will. And, you know, I learned so much from him, especially after his illness. And watching him in his silence, because he didn't speak that much, but watching his grace, his gratitude, his acceptance of his situation, when he didn't really have control of many things, not his bodily functions, not his movements, not the food that he ate. I mean, he was stripped of all of that, and yet he accepted it. And I think just watching that and watching the humility with which he did that, I feel like, and I always say to people, that he taught me more in that time, in his illness, than he ever did when I was growing up.
You know, when you're talking about your dad, of course, you know, my mom had a stroke, and it sounds oh so familiar, and trying to understand or learning to love them in this sort of new space that they are in. For me, I always say I'm trying to protect myself because I don't want to fall in love again. Right. My mom, my best friend, who suddenly gets all this taken away from her, her speech, her mobility. A stroke is very cruel. It steals from you. Yeah. You know, it steals maybe the best of who you are. And like you said, you know, just letting your father, observing your father, right, being who he is and accepting with humility. I think I see that in my mom as well. Now, talk to me about being a caregiver, because that, I remember when it happened to me and my brother, and we suddenly realized that we are caregivers. That term was new, you know. It's like, I don't know what that means. I don't know how do I fit into this space? What do you mean I'm a caregiver? And then also, what it does to you as a person. So I'd love to know about how it changed you, you know, becoming your father's caregiver. How did it change you as a person?
Wow, yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people have this experience where they unseemingly turn into a caregiver for a family member. And you know, I think that there is a difference when you're paid to do that kind of work for someone who you don't have a relationship with. But again, my father, I was his daughter. Yeah. He unfortunately had to be in situations where I had to bathe him. I had to clean up after him when he went to the bathroom. Not all the time, but there were situations that warranted that. My mother really was his primary caregiver because I was going to work and earning the money to sustain us. And I don't think anything could have prepared me for that. I mean, I was 21 when it happened, 22, and I didn't even know what a stroke was. Yeah. I thought it was a heart attack. And so when I came back and I see he looks normal, right? But he's not behaving normally. His speech is slurred. He can't get out of the wheelchair. Like, it was so confusing. And I was like, I don't understand. Is his heart okay? Like, it was so confusing. And we kept waiting for him to get better. And he got progressively and very slowly worse. Wow. And so it didn't start off with intensive caregiving, but it ended up being that. And so if I can be completely raw and honest, there were so many times, Pinky, I wanted to run away. I was overwhelmed with it. I think on the outside, everyone was saying, oh, Nafisa, what you do for your father, oh, it's so noble. And they didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. There were times where I would want to sit in my room and just put on my headphones and pretend I didn't hear what was going on outside. And I would leave my mother to deal with the situation because I just could not handle it. And I think after 15 years of caring for him and it getting progressively worse, there was a point where I was trying to find a way to run away from the situation so I wouldn't have to deal with it. It taught me a great deal, but it also changed me in a way that I can't really explain. It was extremely difficult for me to handle. I had to seek counseling for it. I felt completely unable to relate to my peers who didn't have to go through this. And I wasn't able to lean on friends for support, only because, not through no fault of their own, but I just feel like, they wouldn't be able to understand. And I had a really tough time with it. So it's hard for me to admit, especially because he's no longer here, but I did resent it for a lot of the times. I chose to do what I did for him, but there was resentment that came with it. And there's been a lot of guilt around that, but it's just the honest truth that I didn't do it angelically, like everyone thinks I might have.
Yeah. No, I completely relate to that as a caregiver myself, not a primary caregiver, but I relate to everything you're saying, especially when you just want to run away from it all because it's surreal. Yeah. Like sometimes I look up and I'm like, God, are you joking? Is this a joke? Is this a sick joke? Is this, but yeah, we're talking about God now, and one of your posts, I really loved it. Man plans, God laughs. My mother always used to say, man proposes, God disposes.
Wow.
Yeah. So why do you think, as human beings, we are so pompous in believing that we are in control?
Well, I mean, I really don't know how to answer that, to be honest. I don't know why we think that. The only thing that I can tell you is, for me, it has been extremely humbling every time I'm reminded that I'm not in the driver's seat. And I'm saying that when stuff goes wrong. Because when stuff goes right, I'm very happy to take credit for it. I'm like, yep, that's because I did it, right? But the truth is, we're not in control. And you can do everything by the book, everything right, and it still goes horribly wrong. Yeah. Right? When you lose someone, you have no control. I lived with a lot of guilt for the fact that when I found my father in his chair at 4:20 in the morning, that I didn't even try to resuscitate him, that I just accepted that he was gone. And I lived with this guilt saying I should have done something. I should have tried to drag this, 90-kilo man, put him on the floor and start to perform CPR. I mean, I don't think that would have made a difference. Yeah. It wasn't in my control. And I think that, as human beings, we need to have hope. So we plan. We plan for the trip that we're taking next year. We plan for the house we're going to buy. We plan for the, hopefully, husband we're going to meet and family that we're going to have. And it's important to do that, because if you're not living with any hopes and goals and ambitions and aspirations, then, what kind of a life would we live? and you talk about it so much, and I listen to you every time you do about the mindfulness and about being present in the moment. And I'm so not a champion at it, but I really do try.
Yeah.
You know, to just stay present. So I don't know why we generally do as human beings. I'm not sure what the reason for that is.
I think a lot of us have to ask ourselves that question.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay if we're not always mindful. And, you know, as much as we try to be, we have to give ourselves a break. We're only human.
Right.
And now we're going to jump into, you know, your entrepreneurial journey.
Right.
I love your jewelry.
Thank you.
Honeycomb Jewellery. It's already, you know, you started in August 2019?
Full-time focus on it in August 2019.
And now it's a household name. It's a brand in such a short span of time. You know, moving from somebody who was employed 9 to 5, now doing your own thing, you're your own boss.
Right.
Completely daunting, a step to take.
Mm-hmm.
Just walk us through that process where you moved from the corporate to the design, the creative world.
Right.
Just what went through your mind and what made you say, okay, yeah, it's time?
Well, I mean, I've always had a creative streak. You know, I played piano when I was younger. I liked to draw and paint. I liked to write. But I mean, these are not things that were typically encouraged, right? Because what are you going to do? That's a hobby. You put that on the side and you focus on the things that are going to earn you the money to pay the bills. And especially with my responsibility with, you know, my both parents, and I have a wonderful brother who also assists, you know, with support. But it was necessary for me to, I felt like I needed to make very careful decisions, very sensible decisions about what was going to earn me the money. And so I was, you know, I worked in the corporate world for about 13 years, and actually about 15 years.
Wow.
And then my father died. And then I said, you know what, I really would like to do something more meaningful, because, and I think you'll understand this, we all need to be needed. Yeah. And I felt like a major part of my reason for being on this planet was gone. Like he wasn't around, so I didn't have to care for him. And so I decided to join some community work and you know, try and give back in that way. It was a paid position, but it was my way of doing something more meaningful. It turns out I'm not really cut out for community work, and I think that I also tend to soak up energy. It was really affecting me. I was talking to people who were, you know, experiencing deep psychosocial issues, and even though, you know, it's not the same work that a psychologist or a therapist would do, it was still very difficult for me to absorb that energy, and I was struggling with it. But while I was working at that job, I took a jewelry making course. It was like a basic course. And it was something that I did because I was like, oh, well, you know, I like to wear jewelry. Perhaps I'll fix a couple of pieces. Perhaps I'll give a little, you know, gift to my mom or whatever it is. And I never in a million years thought that I would have stumbled upon the thing that I really think I was born to do.
Right.
Like, it's still kind of, I got whiplash because it happened so quickly. And I still have an element of disbelief about how it happened. Wow. It was an incredible thing for me. I still can't understand how in such a short span of time things have, you know, evolved the way that they have. It's almost like, well, it shouldn't be like this, right? Like, I mean, it should take longer, shouldn't it, for me to get to this? But I do also believe that it's divinely guided. There's something about it that feels very certain. Yeah. I think I have to check my ego every so often and know that, you know, I don't know it all. I don't have it all under control. I don't always know what's going to happen with it. But there's something beautifully, divinely guided about the entire process.
Wow. That's amazing. And that you're able to tap into that energy where you can say it's divinely guided. And I feel like a lot of the times when we tap into our purpose or the reason that we were born or what we were meant to do, there is a sense of this is not just me. There's other forces sort of helping me out. Right. I don't know if you believe in that.
Absolutely.
So when did Honeycomb start feeling like a business, and how does it feel for you to see your business grow?
So, so initially, you know, I was making pieces for myself, and I'd wear, you know, a different necklace every day. I'd walk into work, and I'd get all this feedback, and sometimes I'd walk home without it because it had either been gifted or bought off of my neck, really. And I can't remember exactly when, but I want to say almost 3 weeks or even less after I did the course. I designed the logo, registered the brand. Like I just, there was something so, again, there was this certainty about it, and there was just no question. Like I knew what I was going to call it because I'd had an epiphany a few years earlier about, you know, Honeycomb. At that point I had just quit my corporate job. My father was very ill. I was really completely spent from taking care of him and you know, working this job that was very grueling. And you know, every night I would go to the sports club by my house, and I'd have my earphones in, and it would be, you know, I would always go at night, so there was no disturbance or interference from other people. And I'd be walking around the track, kind of sobbing and just saying, what is it going to be? What am I going to do that's going to make my soul sing?
Yeah.
What am I going to, what business idea is this going to be? And I had no idea what the business idea was. But I was looking down at that. They had those that Cabro sort of paved track, and they had them in these hexagon shapes. And I was looking at it, and this is like 9 o'clock at night, right? I'm pounding the pavement. I've got my earphones in, and I'm looking at this honeycomb shape, and I'm saying to myself, I don't know what the business is going to be. I have no idea what it's going to be, but I'm going to call it Honeycomb. So it was just, I knew from like 3 years before I even did the jewelry course that I was going to call it Honeycomb. So it was very simple. Like, I mean, I used like an online free designer thing, you know, just pulled up the logo, and it stuck. Like, I haven't changed the logo to this day because of how meaningful it was for me. People always ask me, you know, how I came up with the name, and I tell them the story, and I say, I knew from even before I did the course that that was what it was going to be. And so really early on, I knew that I wanted to do this as a business, and that it was going to be something that I would incorporate my writing and my storytelling with the pieces. And I think that what happened is it took me a while to realize that I could do it full-time, and that it could sustain me full-time. But I think the pressures of the job that I was in, and the fact that I really just wasn't cut out for it, pushed me to make that decision. And it really was a leap of faith. I will never forget that I came to my first What Women Want session at Westgate, when you had them at Westgate, and I was sitting in the front row, and I shared that. I shared that I had just given in a 3-month resignation, and my heart was just feeling lighter. I was feeling trepidation, of course, but there was something innately, like, it's scary, but I know this is what I need to do.
So again, it's about tapping into maybe some sort of intuition that's guiding you, listening to it, the gut feeling,
right?
That has allowed you to reach this level.
Yeah.
But I watched an interview where you spoke about how when you were thinking about the business, you had spoken to people.
Yes.
You say you engaged mentors, but not on a formal level,
right,
and on an informal level. How do you identify these people? The reason I'm asking you this is because anybody who's watching is sort of in a position that you were in.
Right.
It's like, how do I identify somebody I want to mentor me on an informal level?
So I think that certain people would go about it in terms of approaching someone that they would like to be a mentor and say, you know, will you mentor me? Yeah. The thing is, a lot of people are not open to that. The people that you really would ideally like to mentor you have a lot on their plates, right? And as much as they might like to help you, I mean, they must get 1,000 of those requests. Yeah. And so this is, you know, design and fashion. I looked to people like yourself who were doing these, you know, live videos and sharing online about, you know, what is important, what keeps your brand authentic, how to behave, you know, in a social media setting. Those are things that that's information I got from you without having to find a way to spam your email and say, hi, Pinky, my name is Nafisa from Honeycomb Jewellery. Can you be my mentor?
Yeah.
Right? I also am really extremely blessed to have a brother who, I mean, when he watches this, I will deny it still, but he's way smarter than I am. And he is way more experienced than I am. And
there, we have it on record.
I'll make sure he doesn't get to watch this. But, you know, he has been my biggest mentor. He's been a business mentor for me. He's been my biggest fan, which is incredible because it's jewelry. You know, I always had in my head that this was going to be something I was going to do, and it was going to be a lonely place for me, but I was okay with it.
Yeah.
I never imagined that I would get that support from him. So he's been a huge mentor for me, and he's got a fair amount of experience in the entrepreneurial world as well. So he's coming in with, and obviously he has a vested interest in seeing me succeed.
Yeah.
I have friends who are business people. So the thing is, you know, Pinky, people are, I really do believe, are inherently good.
They are.
And I think that if people feel disappointed because they're not getting assistance, possibly it's because they're being parasitic in the way that they want that assistance. You know, if I come to you and I say to you, Pinky, will you wear a piece of jewelry and talk about it on you know, your social media? But I've never once reciprocated in any way. I've never made you feel like, you know, I support what you do, and I mean, what is going to be compelling for you to do that? You can be a good person and still say, okay, well, because you must get a gazillion of those requests. And so I always say to people, I think that if you look in the right places, you will find people who can mentor you. And if you can't pay for it, I think the ideal thing is to get a business coach or a mentor. And obviously you would have to spend money on that. But if you look in your networks, people, I mean, I have some incredible women in my realm who have achieved incredible things in all kinds of ways. And so this is why I'm saying it may not be in the formal way, but I watch them, I learn from them, and then I feed back to them and say how much they've inspired me just by observing what they do.
I think that's it's so valuable. What you've just said there, it's extremely valuable, because a lot of people, like, what do we seek? We seek validation, we seek approval, we seek sort of just a thank you, or you know, what you're doing is a good thing, or, you know, I'd love to learn how to do what you do. I've noticed, and especially this is how I've gotten to know you, Nafisa, is through What Women Want.
Right.
You know, you've come for the events, you've participated, you've commented on posts, you've shared posts, and this is an appreciation as well, because I am truly grateful that you do that, because if it wasn't for people like you, and there are a few people like you who continuously, you know, they champion on this brand and they champion on whatever topic we're discussing. This is how you get ahead. And like you said, not everything has to be monetary.
Right.
And yeah.
So I also want to say, I think that, again, I always go back to authenticity. So it's important that even that championing of something is authentic.
Yeah.
I think if I was, you know, shouting about what women want and I didn't really believe in it, and I didn't think it was valuable, but I wanted to just eventually get something out, it would come through.
Yeah.
And so there has to be authenticity in that as well. And I think that that's the other thing, is people say, well, I'll you know, talk about this or promote this or whatever, just because there's an end goal. There's always something I'm waiting to get back from it. It's just really nice to do something without the expectation.
I completely agree. And I think people can always tell when you're coming from pure space. So people who are watching, a lot of people who watch What Women Want, follow me on Instagram, etc., are creators, they're designers. How would you encourage them to follow their passion and market their business?
So I think it's never going to feel like the right time, the perfect time to do anything. I think that it's going to take a little bit of courage, and I think that it's going to have to be something that you really do have a passion for, but just start. Just do it. It's never going to feel like the ideal time. I mean, I didn't even have mannequins to showcase my jewelry. And I started to showcase, I was just like, you know what? I because the initial feedback was also important in my growth. It gave me an understanding of who my market was going to be, you know, and I learned to display better and better, and I'm still learning. It's a constant evolution. You're never going to feel like you're completely there. I just launched an e-commerce website. It's not perfect, but it's there, and it's going to get better and better. But if we wait until we've achieved that status, whatever that perfection we think is in our heads, I mean, life is just passing you by.
Yeah.
And so I think if the seed is there, and if the passion is there, I think my one piece of advice is just going to be start.
Yeah.
In whatever way.
So bloggers get bloggers blues, writers get writer's block. What do jewelry creators get? And have you ever suffered it?
I have suffered it.
Is there a name for it? Should we coin one now?
I think writers use this, but creative constipation.
Oh,
is,
wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's going to be my. It's not my term. I think that is a term that's used, but that's what I would call it. And I very rarely experience it, because for me it's interesting whether I'm in a place of pain or a place of happiness. I somehow am able to channel those feelings into pieces of jewelry. But I did experience it very strongly when the initial kind of panic and doom and gloom of COVID hit, and I just completely felt deflated, and the creativity just wasn't flowing. I just felt completely like there was nothing there, and if I was going to make something, it would have been completely forced. It wasn't going to be inspired by something unique. So that's I mean, because my journey has been quite short, I have definitely experienced that, and that was the point when it hit. Creative constipation.
I like it. You heard it here first. What is the one thing that makes you feel good about yourself?
So I think that if I'm ever in a place where I feel like I've lost my sense of humanity or empathy, I think that I wouldn't like myself very much. I'm not great at it. I think that sometimes, you know, I mean, we're all human. I have my flaws. I sometimes look at people or things and I judge. But I think empathy, tolerance, you know, everyone is different. I mean, look at this situation we're in right now. Today, I mean, I miss hugging you. I don't see you very often. I would hug you, but I'm dealing with this in a way that I'm finding very difficult, because I don't know if it's hypochondria of some sort, or if it's really driven by the fact that I'm worried about my mother, who I take care of, and I don't want this virus to spread back to her. But if we can just be tolerant and empathetic and no judgment of how everyone else deals with it, because we are all doing the very best that we can. Everyone is just trying to do their own, like, we don't have time. I mean, we hopefully don't have time to look at anyone else and judge them.
Yeah.
Right? If we can just
hopefully.
Hopefully. If we can just kind of focus on doing us, I think that's really important. So for me, if I can just continue to hold tolerance and empathy as forefront, then it makes me feel better about the person that I am.
Wow.
I hope that answers your question.
It does completely. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe so you can watch more episodes like this. And remember, you can grab your phone and press *544 #OK and reply with 0, and you get 200 MB of YouTube for just 20 bob. These conversations are brought to you by SBM Bank. Thank you for watching. Remember, SBM Bank is always thinking of you, their client. They have something called Passion for Profit. It's basically a series of weekly webinar events where topics affecting business owners are discussed by subject matter experts. For your chance to win with Safaricom, we're giving away a phone thanks to Safaricom. All you have to do is head over to our Instagram page or my public Facebook page and subscribe to our newsletter, and you could be a winner of a brand new phone courtesy of Safaricom. Nafisa and I would love to hear from you. Like, what have you taken away from Nafisa's conversation today? I know I have taken away so much. So make sure you comment below and let us know what 3 things have affected you in our conversation and what really resonates. Thank you, Nafisa. I appreciate your time. I love your energy, and I wish you all the best, all the well.
I'll take all the well too.
Take all the well on your journey with Honeycomb. I know you're going to be. Well, you're going to be a hard person to get a hold of, so I'm glad I'm one of the first people to interview you. On this show, we have conversations that aim to inspire, and we hope that it causes you to take a deep dive within yourself to find out who you are. Real power is always internal. Real power is self-love. Real power is from your core, and real power comes from authenticity. There's nothing like showing up as your authentic self. Find that person and show up as that person every day. The world will be grateful that you did. Thank you for watching, and see you again real soon on Pinky TV.